Maybe a change of scenery would be good for Belichick. Get out of like the New England area, get to the West Coast, get some sun. Yeah, you
Mhm.
like going up to Nantucket, but get some of that California dreaming going on
Put
Laced
yourself in
Brown.
Belichick's shoes, though. Like, do you want to do something like that, or do you want to just be done?
I would like to on to Kansas City.
Belichick is for sure going after the record.
Yeah, I'm gonna go take that record from Shula because I really want it. I want to be known as the greatest coach of all time. Don't quote me on that.
Can you do an impression of Bill Belichick getting some sun on the California coast?
Getting a tan for the first time?
Yeah, I don't think you want me to take my shirt off just yet. But all the leaves are brown and the sky is gray. California dream.
Oh man!
On a Wednesday.
Welcome to the Circus Catch. Ow! Rewind it back, give a listen, tell me I'm wrong. I'm becoming a social media guru. I'm always up for the challenge.
Are you kidding me? This is something that you've never seen in the history of golf. Guess who called that one? What more can you say?
I am dubbed the Houston player hater. I don't have time to believe. I want that golden sombrero and have the heart of the champion, as some would say.
You got butthurt.
What is he thinking? Do you remember the bubble? Didn't really look too fancy in my eyes.
I do have a couple W's in my belt.
Is he the greatest of all time?
It is like magic.
We are back at it with another Christmas episode. Merry Christmas, everybody, and a happy holiday season to you all. We got all the guys back here once again. Guys, thank you so much for joining us on this very special Christmas edition of the Circus Catch.
Jesse wins hat, by the way.
Jesse wins for having that hat, by the way.
Of course.
Wins the costume
Last minute
contest.
choice, by the way. Y'all know I'm not a big Christmas person, but this is my daughter's hat at one point. And
It's
it
nice.
does not fit me at all.
Looks
my,
like it
Looks like it
fits
fits.
my head hurts a lot.
Well,
Just so you guys know.
You
Are you
won't
sure
have
your
to
head
wear
doesn't
it the
hurt
whole
from a lot of the
episode.
sports news going on?
You sacrifice pain and sweat for the look.
Yeah.
What's the saying? Beauty is pain, right?
Ooh, beauty is pain.
It's like wearing a suit doing a sideline report when it's 95 degrees outside.
Let's go ahead and get right into it. The big news of the week. Draymond Green has been suspended by the NBA indefinitely after a hit on Yusuf Nurkic. This is now his third suspension in the calendar year, so the NBA has decided to suspend him indefinitely and had him go to mandatory counseling, which he is currently in. Guys, do we think this is the right move to put Draymond Green through counseling before he comes back?
I've been saying this since Draymond was at Michigan State. He is a dirty player. He's never shown any qualms about losing his temper at the worst times. And that cheap shot he had earlier this week, oh my goodness, man. I don't see how you can do anything other than put him in mandatory counseling.
I completely agree. So this, it didn't start here, but we're going to talk about the Jordan Poole incident in practice. He punches his own teammate, which is ridiculous. Steps on Sabonis last year, puts Gobert into a headlock, which was like such an overreaction. I understand that, the rule is in those scuffles, you're supposed to grab your own player. Gobert grabs Klay Thompson, but you still don't put him in a headlock. And then he didn't let him go. And he tried to say after in the press conference that he wasn't trying to swing at Nurkic or he wasn't trying to connect with him. And he said he's not that good of a fighter to be able to connect with him on a 360 swinging punch. If you watch every single one of those replays, he swung his arm and looked back and almost knew exactly where Nurkic was. It's enough is enough. I mean, he's costing Golden State wins.
And to that point, about having some of the leaders in the locker room come and talk to him, I'm not sure that that's something that's going to happen because Draymond Green is the vocal leader of the Golden State Warriors. Steph Curry obviously is the man everybody thinks about because of what he's done, his historical career, one of the best point guards of all time. But is he the vocal leader in the locker room? No, that's Draymond. Steve Kerr was too quick to come to his defense after the Gobert incident, so I don't know who's going to step up and give him that message. I think he's going to have to look to guys that he trusts outside of that organization, even like a LeBron James, for example, who is an infamously great vocal leader in the locker room. Somebody who he trusts, who's his friend, not a guy like Shaq who said he doesn't need counseling, because clearly that is something that he needs.
It comes off as the Warriors are enabling this, that they're not addressing it. So Draymond's going to continue to behave in this way. And the only reason why you don't thoroughly address it a lot is because the Warriors have been winning. But now this window is finally starting to close where your core three of Steph, Clay, and Draymond, they're getting older, and you're going to have to start to look at getting younger players in there. But Austin, you're right. With Jordan Poole, you traded off Jordan Poole and you kept Draymond. What kind of message does that send? And the fact that Draymond even says, I'm going to apologize for what I did to Yusef, but I'm not going to apologize for what I did. Like, that's kind of a double neck. That's like, oh, I'm going to apologize, but I'm not going to apologize. Like, how can you do that? And even I was listening to Dan Patrick, and he had Charles Barkley on, and Chuck was even saying, for Chuck, towards the end of his career, he started playing dirtier because he couldn't keep up. And that's probably what he sees a little bit of what's going on with Draymond.
Guys, let's stick with the Warriors real quick. Something happened this week that hasn't happened in a long time. Steph Curry missed every single three that he attempted. That snaps his 268-game streak of making at least one three-pointer. On the flip side of that, on the other team in Northern California, Keegan Murray made 11 straight threes, which is a record. And Jalen Brunson on the other side of the country went 9 for 9 on threes, 100%, 50 points. That's the first time that's happened in NBA history where a player scores 50 points and is 100% from three. What do you guys think is the most impressive or alarming stat?
I'm going to say Steph not making a three in the game.
That's pretty wild.
Money. He's been money. And that everybody has a bad night. I can see that. But that's one of the most surprising things, just a streak that long finally concluding.
Yeah, but can we just talk about Brunson? 50
Yes.
points. 9 for 9 from deep. That is insane to me. I know I'm not a big NBA guy, but when I heard about that, that's an accomplishment, a performance to really highlight a career right there.
The most impressive stat is Brunson. I mean, 9 threes is a lot. And he's a lefty. You know, he's got a beautiful stroke. Had him on my fantasy basketball team. Not that matters, but fantastic performance from a New York Knick. Just stepping up. I mean, 9 3-pointers and a score 50. I mean, it just goes to prove he's not just shooting threes. You know, he's getting to the foul line. He's getting inside. Steph Curry, I mean, yeah, he missed the three. Like Jackson said, he had a bad shooting night. Obviously, it doesn't happen very often to make at least one. But, I don't think it's that alarming that he missed a three. I think what's more alarming is Klay Thompson, forgot how to shoot the basketball because he has been playing awful.
He really has. And I don't want to take anything away from what Keegan Murray has done, but Jalen Brunson is the story here, right? 9 for 9 for threes, 50 points. Like I said, it's never happened before. Jalen Brunson has been playing out of his mind right now. I'm sure Dallas misses him a lot.
Yeah, I can't believe they let him go.
To be fair, he wasn't this hot when he was in Dallas. He was good, but he wasn't this hot.
He had glimpses, though, that he could, step up and shine. Just give him a little more time.
Absolutely.
But even in Dallas right now, the Kyrie Luka thing is working. It wasn't working last season, but it's working right now.
Today, we take a look back at 2022 and talk about our favorite moments from this year. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Welcome to the Circus Catch.
Ow! What was that for? Why'd you do that?
It's in the script, Jordan.
That was in the script? I have the worst writer in the world. Oh my gosh, where is he?
That was me getting hit in the head last season. What you may not know is that this is the person who was hitting me in the head repeatedly, I might add, last season. All in good fun, though. Ladies and gentlemen, my good friend Megan is with us today.
Hi.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. Just so you know, I do all of my own stunts, and I appreciate you playing along. I think you thought you were going to give me some brain damage. You may have, but I'm good. I'm here
He
today.
was brain damaged long before I came along and hit him with a football.
We made it to season 2 at least, so yeah. Megan, I got a couple questions for you. So, like our guest last week, you live in California. You were born and raised here, and yet your team is not from the state. What made you decide to be a Green Bay Packers fan?
So I like to say that I didn't choose the Packers chose me. And that's because my grandfather played for the Acme Packers. And my great grandma, she actually owned a bar in Green Bay on Broadway Street. It was called Noel's Saloon. So somehow it's just kind of a family rooted teen at this point. So
it was meant to be. Absolutely.
I think so.
Growing up as a Green Bay Packers fan, who was your favorite player on the team? I know there's a lot of legends to choose from.
So this is going to be generic, and I'm sorry, but it has to be Brett Favre.
Okay.
It has to be. I mean, I remember 2003, a Week 16 game against the Raiders. It was the game after his father passed away.
Right.
And just that game, I think, really drove me to my love of football. But I also can't forget to mention BJ Raji. Shout out. I love me a big guy touchdown.
Yes.
And his pick six. And then that touchdown dance, I mean, that's the epitome of big guy touchdowns. But as I got older and I kind of paid more attention to football, I have 3 people that I have to mention.
Okay.
That would be Jordy Nelson, Randall Cobb, and Mason Crosby, my silver fox. Jordy was just astounding to watch during Rodgers' legacy. And I mean, Cobb, when he came back to the Packers and said he was coming home, I literally cried. That was such a moment for me. Mason, in 2016, we got to see him come back in the divisional round after being iced out, made the kick again, and it has made the ultimate Selena scene, one that I watch quite often if I get sad about my Packers, I won't lie. But I got to also experience that twice in person. One was during the regular season game against the Niners. I believe that was 2021. My husband's a very big Niner fan, so
Yes,
that was a fun game for us. Rodgers led the team downfield with like 30 seconds left, and Mace just drilled a field goal to win. And to watch the look on the Niners face, or the Niners fans' faces, I should say, was just the ultimate gift.
It's a great feeling watching their sorrow. Talk a little bit more about that experience at Lambeau. What is it like going to such a legendary place, one of the biggest and most famous places in all of football in the world?
So I have to say, there's really not words to describe it other than magical. I mean, unfortunately, I need to experience again because I did get COVID while I was there, so I felt very miserable. But regardless of that fact, it was everything someone who loves football could hope it to be. It was legitimately a once in a lifetime experience. We got to do a field tour with Antonio Freeman.
That's awesome.
Shout out. I have his autograph up here somewhere. Boom. But unfortunately, so you get to walk through the tunnels, walk through all the, fancy offices, things of that nature. Once you get to the field, though, you do not get to get on the grass, unfortunately.
It's hallowed grounds.
It is,
Yeah.
but just you can feel it running through your veins when you're there. And we got to do a trolley tour too. I always say that word weird, sorry. So we got to see City Stadium before they had Lambeau Field. And the guy that just ran the tour just knew everything about the Packers. And it was just to learn from such a legend was really great.
Let's talk about this offseason with Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, he is no longer a Packer. He is now with the New York Jets. Let's talk a little bit about his wild offseason that was kind of blown up in the media. Did you expect him to leave? Did you expect him to stay? How's that been?
Well, I think as a Packer fan, nobody didn't want to think of the possibility of Rodgers leaving. I mean, he was the clutch franchise quarterback that everybody relied upon, even the front office. And I have a lot of thoughts on Rodgers, as you know. I listened to him quite a bit on Pat McAfee, obviously. I think as a person, he is very honest, and the media has kind of portrayed him as this villain that I don't think is a fair assessment. Not that he was always right in his dealings with the front office, but I think our front office really suffers from a cultural, just issue with and it started with Jordy Nelson personally, I think. When Aaron saw what they did to Jordy Nelson, I think that really changed his attitude towards the front office. Jordy was willing to take the vet minimum to stay with the team, and they wouldn't even do that. And I think that really was a wake-up call for both Devontae and Aaron, because that could be Devontae the next few years, and then it kind of was. I'm honored to have been able to watch him play for all these years.
Yeah, and like you said, his comeback is astounding, and it looks like there is a chance that he plays this year. That is insane after tearing an Achilles. Let's talk about that flip side of that, though, where Aaron Rodgers is now gone. Jordan Love is now the starting quarterback for the Green Bay Packers. What is your assessment of how he's done this season and all the rest of the young crew around him? Because he, like you said, he really doesn't have any veterans there. So it's a lot of young players. Yeah. What's your assessment of how their season's gone so far?
So I just have one phrase: all you need is love.
I like it.
And, I wasn't obviously sold on him when he got drafted in 2019. And I will be an Aaron Rodgers fangirl until the day I die. But when I got to watch him in preseason in 2022 against the Niners, there was something there. And I was like, all right, we're on the Jordan Love train, and I'm fine with that. And despite, there's going to be ups and downs. We are the youngest team in the NFL with an average age of 25.7. He's finding his footing, and I think we might have hit on a third franchise quarterback. I really do. He's got an arm like Brett Favre. He's got the pocket awareness of Aaron Rodgers. I mean, all of the good stuff is there between the two franchise quarterbacks we've had, especially one that is coached by Tom Clements, who also coached Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. So I think he's getting the best of both worlds in that. And I'm not ready to give up hope. No one thought we would be able to even go to the playoffs, but here we are, and he's keeping us in games.
We take a look at the NFC North. The Detroit Lions have all but wrapped it up. The Minnesota Vikings are right there in the mix. The Green Bay Packers are right there in the mix. So you've got three teams in that division that are in that playoff race. And the team that's not, the Chicago Bears, they have two very high first-round picks next year. So it looks like they're going to be set up for success next year. How do the Green Bay Packers stay competitive in a division that seems like it's on the rise in all four organizations? And where do you see that playing in over the next couple years?
So I think next year will be even better for the Packers if we make the hard decisions in coaching staff. And I think it's the coaching staff that's really holding us back. When we get that elite defense finally, or even just a top 12, top 15 defense, which we haven't had since 2011, I really think we will be the team to be feared. And once we figure it out at coaching, I think it's going to be a nice little rivalry between the Lions and the Packers, because I just don't think the Bears and the Vikings are there yet.
One of my favorite Christmas traditions is to play games with my family. And boys, I consider you guys my podcast family. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to play a game called NFL Panic Button. So what we're going to do is we're going to take 12 teams in the league, and we're going to discuss whether or not we're panicking on this team yet. Jackson, I'll go ahead and I'll start with you. Are we panicking on the Houston Texans?
No, and here's why. The Texans have exceeded expectations that they have not done in a long time. They have actually matched their win record from 2021 and 2022. Right now, they're tied for first place in the AFC South, depending on how CJ Stroud, if he gets out of concussion protocol. With the last 3 games of the season, you have one against the Colts and you have one against the Titans within the division. It's been a successful year for the Texans, and a lot of people were expecting them to win maybe 5.5. That's what a lot of places were suspecting with them. So it's a successful, not panicking. It's just been a great ride this year, and you see a lot of great for seasons to come. Now, I want to know a little bit about what Austin feels on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Is it time to panic?
Yeah, Jackson, George Jesse, smack it. We're smacking the panic button with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Back-to-back losses against the Cardinals and the Patriots. 2 teams that are probably not even trying to win an NFL football game. haven't won a playoff game since 2017. Yeah, everybody wants to talk about the Mike Tomlin never had a losing season. None of that matters if you're not winning playoff games and getting to the Super Bowl and trying to win the Super Bowl. What happened to the old Steelers age of we want nothing short of Super Bowl wins? Kenny Pickett has proved that he's probably not the guy for the future moving forward. Trade for Justin Fields in the offseason. Defense is ready to win a Super Bowl now. You got the weapons on offense, but right now, bam, we're hitting the panic button. Jesse, what about those Jaguars in the AFC? Are we hitting the panic button on them yet?
You have to. I mean, they were sitting so pretty, sitting at 8-3, dominating the AFC South. Now they've lost 3 in a row. Got hammered by Baltimore. Did not look good in that second half whatsoever after they scored their touchdown. Now, you've got 2 games in the next 2 weeks against very winnable opponents. Tampa Bay, I know Tampa Bay looks really good against Green Bay, but that's a winnable game for Jacksonville. Get them to right the ship. And then you got the Panthers, who are 2-12. You have to win those games and stave off this 3-way tie in the AFC South. The panic button is getting hit, but there's a chance for the Jags to salvage the season. Jordan, what about those Broncos in the West?
Those Broncos, Jesse, I am not hitting the panic button on the Denver Broncos. Not yet, anyways. Sure, they have a little bit of an uphill battle, and sure, they got embarrassed by a faltering Lions team so bad they had their fans saying, Broncos country, let's hide. But while some of these wildcard hopefuls are going to beat up on each other, the Broncos have one of the easiest schedules. They are going to scrape the bottom of the barrel these last 3 games in the AFC. They have the Pats, they have the Chargers, both at home, and then they end the season with the Raiders. I'm not buying into this whole Sean Payton and Russell Wilson can't get along thing. Look, coaches get after their quarterbacks. That's nothing new. That's not a thing that's been just invented for Sean Payton and Russell Wilson. I think they'll be just fine. They're way better than the 2022 version of this team, and they're still in contention for this AFC West. So, Jackson, speaking of that, are we panicking on the Kansas City Chiefs just yet?
That's like a very, very small panic just because there are very limited receivers who can catch the ball for Kansas City. You have Patrick Mahomes. That's still something. He's one of the greatest quarterbacks in the league right now. And the reigning champions, questionable. Like, you kind of want something more because you're going to start double targeting Travis Kelce. And if that receiving core can't seem to not get offsides, actually not drop the ball, because Patrick Mahomes is doing as much as he can, and he has been, you can see how frustrated he's been on the sidelines. It's not slight panic just yet because they still have always won the division with Patrick Mahomes under center, but this is going to be a very, very big test for them in the upcoming weeks to see if they can finish off strong, because the Chiefs have never gone on the road for a playoff game. They've always had home field advantage. So this is going to be one of those seasons where you got to see how tough the Chiefs actually are. In Austin, speaking of toughness, how about them Philadelphia Eagles?
I think every team I got on here, we're massively hitting the panic button, especially after last night's performance against Seattle. 3 losses in a row for Philadelphia. Their defense is getting beat up big time. Their secondary looks awful. Jalen Hurts is a lot of questions about him. Is he still the guy for them? I mean, yeah, obviously he's a really good quarterback, but he hasn't been playing very well. They're down in the dumps right now. Granted, they only have 4 losses, so it's not going to totally kill them in the NFC. But if I was Philadelphia Eagles fans after that performance in Seattle last night to kind of get things back on track, and you lose that game to not a Geno Smith quarterback, I think you really got to start hitting the panic button if you are Philadelphia. Is that a team that you see winning a Super Bowl? In my eyes right now, I don't. Jesse, let's keep it in the NFC. We're talking about those Seahawks that just got the massive victory last night against Philadelphia.
Now, Austin, if you would have asked me this before the game last night, I probably would have said, yeah, let's hit the panic button. Seattle had lost 3 in a row after a 5-2 start, slipping down. But now they got the big win over those Eagles who are struggling. Out of the 7-7 squads in the NFC, Seattle is the worst of those in their division. 1-4 against the rest of the NFC West, and they're 2-5 on the road. Yes, I'm hitting the panic button, but just a little bit. Before the Monday night game, it was definitely worse than that. But you got the win you needed over Philadelphia, who's already in the playoffs. But in order to keep pace with Los Angeles Rams, who are red hot, they've got to continue to win and play well and get wins on the road. Jordan, those Rams, they've come out of nowhere. Where do you see them on this panic?
Yeah, of course we're not hitting the panic button in Inglewood, right? Like you said, the Rams are red hot right now. They took the number 1 seed, as of right now, the Baltimore Ravens in the AFC, to overtime on their field on the East Coast. So I swear I'm not coming at this as a homer, but the Rams are doing just fine. Last year's Super Bowl hangover, we know it was historically bad. We get that. Totally different team right now. The trio of superstars that were out last year, Aaron Donald, Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, they're all back. They're all relatively healthy. The emergence of Kyren Williams out of nowhere has been helping the Rams produce rushing numbers that mirror that of Todd Gurley. And the rookie class that they just drafted, Steve Avila, obviously the great Puka Nacua. We've found a lot of gems in the draft this year, so the Rams will be just fine. And dare I say, this team can win a wild card game on the road. Let's talk about one of those teams they might be playing in that wild card round. Jackson, how about them Cowboys?
I will have to say that while some Dallas Cowboy fans think that the sky is falling just over in Arlington, Irving, wherever Frisco, all of that area, Fort Worth, Dallas area, the sky is probably falling for the Cowboys fans. Yeah, after that embarrassment from Sunday against the Bills, of course the sky could be falling. But if you look at all the losses from the Cowboys, they have been on the road this season. They lost to Cardinals on the road. They lost to the 49ers on the road, the Eagles on the road, and now the Bills on the road. If they can actually secure home field advantage or at least get to host a home game in the postseason, yeah, that's going to be fine. But how well are they going to actually perform on the road? And while there were a lot of talks about Dak being MVP caliber, after that play this past Sunday, now it's teetering over to Brock Purdy again. There's no clarified or for sure MVP candidate. It just changes week to week, which is really weird. But as long as the Cowboys can win the division, I think that everything's going to be okay. But they have to actually go further in the playoffs and not get tossed after the wild card or even the division. What about those Dirty Birds in Atlanta? Austin, how about them Falcons?
Man, I couldn't decide which one's worse, the Steelers or the Falcons. Of course we're hitting the panic button on the Falcons. Arthur Smith, I mean, what are we doing? What are we doing? You draft one of the best running backs to come out of college in the entire NFL in Bijan Robinson. You hand the ball off a million times to Tyler Algier in the rain in Carolina. You're playing an awful team who also isn't trying to win football games. You have Kyle Pitts, one of the most talented tight ends coming out, young tight end too. I mean, what are we doing with the Atlanta Falcons? You lose 9-7 against Carolina. You're just complete. You have a chance to go take control of that division. You just don't do it. It's an embarrassing loss on the road. Panic all the way for the Atlanta Falcons. That's it. That's all I got to say. That's it. Let's go. Let's talk about winning town. Jesse, what about those Packers?
Yeah, if you're in Titletown right now and you're a Packers fan, you are smashing the panic button after these last 2 weeks. They were red hot, won 3 in a row. And now Jordan Love in this offense can't contend with an atrocious defense. Doesn't matter if they put 40 points on the board. Their defense is going to give up 40 more. So, yes, you're smashing the panic button in Titletown. But the Packers have the ability with this team to win out and get a spot in the playoffs. But one of those teams that they're contending with is in their own division, a 7-7 Vikings team who did not look like they could contend, and the Packers were way better then. But now 2 weeks in a row, they've fallen behind Minnesota. Jordan, how about the Vikings in Minneapolis?
This may come as a little bit of surprise to you guys, but I am hitting the panic button in Minnesota for a couple of reasons. Number one, is your best player okay? Justin Jefferson has been in and out of action all season. Number two, you have not been able to find a quarterback after Kirk Cousins went down. How many teams have we seen give great performances from these backup quarterbacks? Browning, DeVito, Minshew, Locke, Flacco, just to name a few. I watched Nick Mullins throw an interception from his butt to a man 3 feet away from him who was also sitting down. He threw it right into his lap. And at this point, we're not going back to the pastronaut. Look, this defense is pretty good. They're a borderline top 10 defense, and that's great. But they have the opposite problem of the Packers. This offense is suspect, and I don't see them making the playoffs with that logjam in the NFC. One thing that we did want to talk about separately from the panic button, guys, was this battle for the NFC South. Because obviously we knew these teams were going to be bad, but one of these teams has to make it. So panic button aside.
And host a playoff game.
And host a playoff game. We're looking at well, let's take Atlanta out of the equation. They you never say never, but let's talk Tampa Bay and let's talk New Orleans. How are we feeling about this NFC South race towards the end stretch right here?
I think that if Baker Mayfield plays as well as he played this past Sunday, because he's got a chip on his shoulder and he has been kind of playing a victim here and there. I don't like the way that things ended over in Cleveland. That was a dirty situation that they did him. They did Baker dirty. I think that the Buccaneers can actually make the playoffs and win out the division.
I'll throw it out there. Do you trust Derek Carr or Baker Mayfield more? I don't really know the answer to that question, but
right now, Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, I'll make the argument for New Orleans. I think their defensive line and their defense can possibly bring them back in this division. They have a ton of weapons. I know Chris Olave didn't play last weekend, but star wide receiver. They've gotten a reemerged Jimmy Graham catching touchdown passes, which is very interesting.
Yeah, love to see
we all know who Alvin Kamara is, one of the best running backs. I'd say top 5 running back, top 10 running back in the entire NFL, catches passes, rushes the football. If Derek Carr can just find the open receivers and not try to make the hero throws all the time, I think the Saints got a good shot to win the division. And don't be surprised if they win a home playoff game inside the whatever the name of the stadium is now, because I know they change it all the time, but that big dome over there in New Orleans.
Yeah, it's the Caesar Superdome. And Jordan, I don't really know if you can really count Atlanta out at this point. Yes, they look the worst of the 3 right now, but I gotta say, to me, there's real no clear-cut favorite. Atlanta doesn't look good. Tampa Bay looked great last week, but they haven't before that. And then New Orleans, like Austin said, can Derek Carr lead this team to a playoff? I don't know. I'm not convinced. If Atlanta can figure out how to utilize Bijan Robinson, who's one of the best backs in the game, effectively, I think Atlanta can still make a playoff. But it's the division is too much in the air right now for me to make a definitive take, and I'm not going to go on Bad Take Boulevard. So I really don't know who's going to get it, but don't count Atlanta out.
Okay, well, if you don't count Atlanta out, that's fine. They do have a super talented roster, but they're young, and I think that the coaching is very lackluster over there, so that's why I don't think Atlanta has even the slightest shot. I'd say it's down to New Orleans and Tampa Bay. And if I'm picking one of these teams right now, I'm taking Tampa Bay. And here's the reason. Tampa Bay looks like they're having fun out there. They look like they have nothing to lose. And they really don't, because nobody expected anything from them. The expectations were at an all-time low for Baker Mayfield this year, right? Baker's had his moments, and he's looked bad when he's tried to play hurt. And I feel like that's affected him so negatively. But last year we saw it. Those last couple games that he played out in Los Angeles, he looked fantastic. So you knew he had a shot coming into this year, and he looks great. Mike Evans is having a killer season. And Chris Godwin is playing on fire once again. So that's going to help them a lot. There's a little bit more dysfunction when I look over at New Orleans. They're the more talented team on paper, but there's a lot of dysfunction in that organization, especially with Michael Thomas putting out his cryptic tweets. Like, nobody knows what that's about. Well, we all know what it's about, but nobody knows why he's doing that.
The next Antonio Brown.
Whoa.
Hot take.
Hot take.
Yes. But let's not forget about what Rachaad White is doing for the Buccaneers out of the backfield. And we're not going to go too much into fantasy, but before the draft even started this season, I was like, I'm going to fade every single Buccaneers player. I'm not going to touch them with a 10-foot pole unless they actually magically drop in a nice, reasonable draft position. I took a gamble on Rachaad White, and dude has been productive, especially just a lot of checkdowns for Baker Mayfield. He's just one of those pass-catching backs, and he's been doing really well. So I really like the cohesive offense that they have. Because let's go back to the Falcons. You have Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Bijan Robinson, and you're not utilizing those 3 weapons. What is the matter with you? Do you really want to compete in your own division? Do you want to go to the playoffs? Do you want to win a Super Bowl? Because forever we will always remember 28-3. We will forever remember 28-3.
Sure will.
The answer is no. They need a new coaching staff. They don't want to win right now.
Well, gentlemen, I want to talk some FCS playoffs. A true playoff with 24 teams. And man, oh man, has it been electric this year. Semifinals on Friday night. South Dakota State 14-0, 28 straight wins now, seeking their 2nd straight national championship. What they did on Friday night in Brookings over Albany, incredible. 59-0 in the first ever meeting between the 2 schools. They are now outscoring opponents 123-12 in the playoffs this year. 2 wins all season by 1 possession. One of those, Austin, your Montana State Bobcats. And both opponents, the other one, Southern Illinois, are in the playoffs. They picked off Albany 3 times in the first half. They led 35-0 at halftime, 556 to 228 in offensive yardage. And the big one, 220 to 66 on the ground. They just shut down Albany's offense all night long. It wasn't even close. At any point in the game, they got that first touchdown 7 minutes in, and the rest was history.
Yeah, Jesse, you were speaking of, how amazing these playoffs have been. Well, it's been amazing on one side of the bracket, right? Because the other side of the bracket has absolutely been dominated by South Dakota State. They look like a freight train that cannot be stopped right now, except for maybe if, Montana State was maybe in the postseason, but they're not, so it doesn't even matter. They already got eliminated. Other side of the bracket, overtime games. The one between Montana State, North Dakota State was amazing. Phenomenal football game. But these Montana Grizzlies, let me tell you something. They have impressed me big time. Ever since that loss at Northern Arizona University back in week, I believe it was 4 or 5, it was write them off. They're done. This is going to be an awful season. Bobby Hauck's going to retire. He's not going to get the record. Everybody wrote them off. And what did they do? They haven't lost a game yet. And every single week, they just continue to impress me. They've gone to the postseason and looked impressive again. Back-to-back overtime victories. But this one on Saturday night against the perennial powerhouse North Dakota State Bison, they go to double overtime. What can you say about Junior Bergen? The guy is electric. These teams don't understand. Maybe you shouldn't kick the ball to him because every time he touches the ball, it seems like he's going to do something electrifying and get the crowd back into the game. And that's exactly what he did for Montana. Another punt return for a touchdown. They go into overtime. Even to their second touchdown, Junior Bergen, again, receiving touchdown, gets in the end zone. How about the 2-point conversion, though? A little toss out to Junior Bergen. He gets a face mask, goes through the play anyway. He described it as he was just going to throw the ball as hard as he could, and he throws it. It gets tipped by a North Dakota State player, basically a free play because it was a penalty anyway. Tipped, caught in the back of the end zone by Keelan White. Just unbelievable stuff for Montana. They stopped North Dakota State on their 2-point conversion. They're going to the national championship to face off against those crazy Jackrabbits for the first time since 2009, and it really looks like the dominant age of Montana football that was back in the 90s and early 2000s is coming back.
It's just too much offense for South Dakota State. I think Montana is going to have their hands full. But Austin, you and I at the beginning of the season, after that Northern Arizona loss, we talked about it, and you even had them completely written off, and I was just in shock because it's just not Montana football to lose to a team like that. And man, they proved everybody wrong, including us.
Even my sports director, who's been doing this for 12 years in Missoula, who's like the biggest Grizz homer on the planet, he wrote them off. And like every week, since then, I've been saying, hey, do they got a shot at this game? Do they got a shot? He just keeps saying, oh, I don't know. They keep surprising me. And then when they played Cat Grizz and they destroyed Montana State inside of Waugh Grizz Stadium, that was kind of like the moment where, okay, I think this team is real. And I think you know what it was too is when they made this the switch to Clifton McDowell for good. They were running 2-quarterback system, trying to do the whole Montana State thing. Nobody does it like them. Once they switched to Clifton McDowell for the rest of the season, He's been phenomenal for them. And Alex Gubner, I mean, defensive lineman for Montana, Big Sky Conference Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year. He is a monster inside. Going to have to get a lot of pressure on Gronowski to have even the slightest a shot. But here's the thing. Don't write off Montana's defense. I know that South Dakota State offense is really good. Their defense has looked really solid. And that's one of the main reasons why they're even in this position in the first place.
And that's true. I got to give you that. Don't count their defense out, but something about that South Dakota State offense just they look so cohesive, so unstoppable. Mark Gronowski is a expert play caller and he manages the offense so well. But I got to shout out what Bobby Hawk has really done to just bring this team back to gel. And I mean, like you said, Junior Bergen is the reason they're even in this position, in my opinion. But can they win outside of Wagriz? That something about that, they've had the home field advantage throughout. Now they're going to go down to Texas. Can they prove themselves on a neutral field away from home? I don't know. It's going to be interesting, and I cannot wait for January 7th.
Folks, thanks for joining us so much on this episode of the Circus Catch. It's a very special episode, not just because it was a Christmas episode, but because we just celebrated our birthday. Just a couple days ago was the 1-year anniversary of our first episode releasing. So we all got our cake / cookies / pie / desserts, what have you. Jesse, tell us what you're munching on over there.
So I got some chocolate chip cookies, and I just want to shout out my daughter, Skylar. She made these by herself from scratch at 10 years old with no help, any adults whatsoever. Corrected a couple things, but I never once had any of us step in. My wife's parents were there in the kitchen with her, but they never interrupted or anything. She did it by herself. So, Skylar, baby, I love you, and thank you for the cookies.
I'll be expecting some of those in the mail coming up soon.
Me too. I'm going to dig into this.
Happy birthday, Circus Catch. Let's dig in here.
Hell yeah.
Absolutely.
Proud of you, Jordan, for putting this together and, taking the bull by the horns and just running with it.
Hey, we've come a long way. I watched the pilot again the other day. We've come a real long way. Guys, thank you so much for everything you've done on the Circus Catch over the last year. I can't tell you guys enough how much I appreciate you guys. Looking forward to doing many more of these and celebrating many more birthdays. So,
hey, we're the Fab Four.
The Fab Four. I like it. So from all these places all over the country, I'm hungry, so I'm going to keep eating. But sayonara, and we will see you guys in a couple weeks. Have a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, Hanukkah, Christmas. I forgot that commercial.
Merry Chrysler.
Festivus for the rest of us.
Happy Crisis.